Kayla stood at the edge of the landing platform watching her three dragons circle the crimson sky of Valdris Prime, the copper one she called Ember Dove, through the clouds while the silver twins, Frost and Storm, chased each other in playful spirals. They were magnificent creatures standing nearly 20 feet tall with wings that could block out the sun. For 300 years, Kayla had lived with her dragons protecting the northern territories from pirates and raiders. She was known across 7 star systems as the Dragon Lady, and most beings gave her a wide berth. Her life had fallen into a comfortable rhythm over the centuries. She would wake before dawn and fly with her dragons across the mountain ranges. She would patrol the trade routes, ensuring that merchant ships could pass safely. She would return to her fortress at sunset and spend her evenings reading ancient texts or maintaining her equipment. It was a solitary existence, but Kayla had convinced herself that she preferred it that way. Dragons were better company than most people anyway. Humans were different, though. They had arrived in this sector only 5 years ago with their curious metal ships and their strange customs. Most species kept their distance from dragons, but humans seemed fascinated by them. They asked endless questions and took pictures and tried to study everything about dragon behavior. Kayla found them amusing in small doses, but mostly she preferred to be left alone. Humans were loud and energetic, and they moved through space with a reckless enthusiasm that other species found alarming. The other elves thought she was strange for choosing to live with dragons. Most of her kind preferred the comfort of their forest worlds or the sophistication of their city planets. They lived in communities and followed traditions that stretched back thousands of years. But Kayla had always felt different. She did not care for the endless social rituals or the careful politics of elven society. She wanted freedom and adventure and purpose. The dragons had given her all of those things. That morning, a human ship landed at the outpost. Kayla recognized the design as a merchant vessel, probably stopping for supplies before heading to the outer colonies. She paid it little attention until she noticed a human male walking directly toward her dragons. He was tall with dark hair, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had no idea how dangerous the situation was. His clothing was practical and worn, suggesting he spent more time working than socializing. He moved with an easy grace that caught her attention. Ember landed first, shaking the ground with her weight. The copper dragon was the largest of the 3 and the most protective of Kayla. She had a fierce temperament and did not tolerate strangers approaching without permission. The human did not run. Instead, he stopped about 30 feet away and simply looked at the dragon with obvious admiration. His face showed no fear, only genuine wonder and respect. Kayla watched from above, wondering if she would need to intervene before her dragon decided to cook this foolish human. But Ember did something unexpected. She lowered her massive head and sniffed the air around the human. Her golden eyes studied him with interest. Dragons had excellent instincts about people, and Ember was particularly good at sensing character. Then she made a low rumbling sound that Kayla recognized as contentment. The human slowly reached out his hand, keeping his movement smooth and calm. He did not grab or rush. He simply offered his hand and waited. When his fingers touched Ember's scales, the dragon closed her eyes and leaned into the touch. Kayla felt her breath catch. In 3 centuries only she had been able to touch her dragons like that. No one else had ever earned their trust so quickly. She had seen warriors try to approach Ember with bravado only to run when the dragon snarled. She had watched scientists attempt to study the dragons from a distance with their instruments and calculations. But this human had simply walked up with genuine appreciation, and the dragon had accepted him immediately. She descended from the platform, her violet cloak billowing behind her. The wind caught her long silver hair and she pushed it back from her face. The human noticed her approach and straightened. Up close, she could see his eyes were a warm brown color, and he had a genuine smile that reached those eyes. Most beings looked at her with fear or calculation, but this human looked at her with simple, friendly curiosity. There was something disarming about his openness. "My name is Lucas Carter," he said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. "I hope I did not overstep by approaching your dragon. She is absolutely beautiful." Kayla studied him for a long moment before accepting the handshake. His grip was firm but not aggressive. His hand was calloused from work and warm to the touch. "I am Kayla," she said. Most beings have more sense than to approach a dragon uninvited. Lucas laughed, and the sound was warm and unforced. It had been a long time since Kayla had heard someone laugh like that without guile or pretense. "I have been told I lack common sense," he admitted. "But I have always been drawn to dragons. Back on Earth, we only have stories about them. Seeing a real one is like witnessing magic. I could not help myself. They are not magic, Kayla said, though she felt herself warming to this strange human. They are living creatures with their own thoughts and feelings. They choose their companions carefully. Even better, Lucas replied, stroking Ember's scales with gentle reverence. Magic is just tricks and illusions, but living beings are real and complex and worth knowing. This girl here is incredible. How long have you been together? Since she hatched, Kayla found herself saying. 300 years ago on a volcanic moon called Paraxis. I was young then, barely 50 years old. I found her egg abandoned in a cave and I stayed with her until she broke free from the shell. She bonded with me immediately. Lucas looked at her with new interest. 300 years, he said softly. You must have seen so much together. The changes in the galaxy alone must be staggering. They talked for nearly an hour standing beside the dragon. Lucas asked thoughtful questions about dragon behavior and biology. He wanted to know how they communicated and what they ate and how they navigated through space. But he also asked about Kayla herself. Where did she come from? What made her choose this life? What did she dream about? No one had asked her such questions in decades. Most beings only cared about what her dragons could do for them. Kayla found herself sharing stories she had not told anyone in years. She described the first time Ember had flown carrying her through the stars. She talked about finding Frost and Storm as hatchlings during a rescue mission. She explained how each dragon had their own personality and preferences. Lucas listened with complete attention, never interrupting or trying to steer the conversation back to himself. The sun climbed higher in the sky and Kayla realized with surprise that she did not want the conversation to end. There was something refreshing about talking to someone who had no agenda beyond simple connection. Lucas did not want to use her dragons for war or profit. He just wanted to understand and appreciate them. The twins, Frost and Storm, eventually landed nearby, curious about the human who had captured their sister's attention. Lucas greeted them with the same respect and wonder he had shown Ember. He did not try to touch them immediately, but instead spoke to them in a soft voice and let them approach at their own pace. Storm, the bolder of the two, stepped forward first and sniffed his hand. Frost waited a moment longer before following her brother's lead. Kayla watched the interaction with fascination. Dragons were excellent judges of character, and all three of hers had accepted this human without hesitation. That said something important about Lucas Carter. She found herself studying him more closely. He had laugh lines around his eyes, suggesting he smiled often. His hands were gentle but strong. There was a steadiness about him that put her at ease. So what brings you to Valdris Prime? Kayla asked. This is not exactly a popular destination for merchant ships. Lucas grinned. I'm actually a freelance engineer, he explained. I travel from station to station fixing things that break, ships mostly, but also life support systems and communication arrays, whatever needs attention. I heard this outpost had some aging equipment, so I came to see if I could help. That is an unusual career path, Kayla observed. Most humans I have met are either military or corporate. I tried the corporate route for a while, Lucas said. Worked for a big company fixing their fleet, but they only cared about profit margins and efficiency ratings. I wanted to help people, not just increase shareholder value, so I bought my own ship and started traveling. It is not always profitable, but it is honest work. Kayla nodded, understanding. I chose a similar path, she said. My people wanted me to serve in the diplomatic corps or join the Cultural Preservation Society, but I wanted something more direct. Dragons need protectors and the trade routes need guardians. It made sense. They talked about their choices and the paths that had led them to this moment. Lucas described growing up on Earth in a place called Colorado, where mountains touched the sky. He had always loved fixing things, taking apart broken devices and figuring out how they worked. His parents had wanted him to become a doctor or a lawyer, but he had followed his own interests instead. There was no regret in his voice, only acceptance. Kayla shared her own story. She had grown up on Silverus Prime, a beautiful forest world where her people lived in harmony with nature, but she had always felt restless. She wanted to see other worlds and meet other species. When she found Ember's egg, it had given her the perfect excuse to leave. Her family had been disappointed, but they had let her go. Elves valued individual choice even when they did not understand it. Do you ever miss home? Lucas asked. Sometimes, Kayla admitted. I miss the forests and the way sunlight filters through the leaves. I miss my younger sister who always made me laugh. But I do not miss the expectations or the limitations. Here I can be myself. I know exactly what you mean, Lucas said. Earth is beautiful, but it felt small after a while. Out here in space, everything is possible. You can be whoever you want to be. They were interrupted by a message on Lucas's communication device. He checked it and sighed. I have to go meet with the station manager about the repairs, he said. But I really enjoyed talking with you. Your dragons are amazing and so are you. Kayla felt warmth spread through her chest at the compliment. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at her with such genuine appreciation. Thank you for taking the time to meet them properly, she said. Most people just see them as weapons or curiosities. They are individuals, Lucas said firmly. Anyone who cannot see that is not paying attention. He gave Ember one final pat and nodded respectfully to the twins. Then he turned back to Kayla and hesitated. His confidence seemed to waver for just a moment. Look, I know we just met and you probably have important things to do, but I was wondering something, Kayla. Waited, her heart beating, slightly faster though she could not explain. Why would you consider having dinner with me tonight, Lucas asked. There is a restaurant in the main district that I passed earlier. Nothing fancy, just a chance to continue talking. I would really like to know more about you and your dragons. Only if you want to, of course. No pressure. The request was so simple and genuine that it caught Kayla completely off guard. In 300 years, countless beings had approached her with offers and proposals. Some wanted to use her dragons for war. Others wanted to study them for science. A few had wanted to hunt them for glory. Politicians had tried to recruit her. Military commanders had tried to hire her. Wealthy collectors had offered fortunes. But no one had ever simply asked her to dinner just to talk. She felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Was it nervousness or excitement or something else entirely? Her dragons had stopped their movements and were watching the exchange with interest. Ember made a soft, encouraging sound that Kayla recognized. The dragon was actually encouraging her to say yes. I do not usually accept such invitations, Kayla said carefully. She was stalling for time, trying to process this unexpected development. Lucas nodded, understanding, showing no signs of offense or disappointment. I figured as much, he said. You probably get asked all the time by people with ulterior motives. But I promise my only motive is enjoying your company. If you change your mind, I will be at the Golden Nebula restaurant at sunset, the one with the blue awning near the Central Plaza. He gave her one more warm smile, then turned and walked back toward the outpost. Kayla watched him go, feeling strangely unsettled. His walk was unhurried and confident. He did not look back or try to convince her further. He had made his invitation and left the choice entirely to her. That kind of respect was rare. Ember nudged her shoulder with her massive snout, and Kayla could swear the dragon looked amused. The copper dragon's golden eyes seemed to sparkle with mischief. What Kayla asked, though, she knew exactly what the dragon was thinking. Ember rumbled in response and tilted her head toward where Lucas had disappeared. Frost and Storm added their own encouraging sounds. All three dragons were clearly in favor of this dinner idea. It is just dinner, Kayla told them, though she was not sure who she was trying to convince. I barely know him. He could be anyone. He could have a dozen reasons for wanting to get close to me, but even as she said the words, she knew they were not true. Lucas had not asked about her connections or her resources. He had not tried to impress her with his own accomplishments. He had simply wanted to talk. And he had treated her dragons with genuine respect, not as tools or trophies, but as individuals worthy of appreciation. Kayla walked back to her fortress, deep in thought. The building was carved into the side of a mountain with large openings where the dragons could come and go freely. Inside, her quarters were simple but comfortable. She had collected items from her travels over the centuries. A woven blanket from the desert planet Arix, a crystal sculpture from the ice moon of Cathara, books and artifacts from dozens of worlds. She stood in front of her wardrobe, staring at the contents with growing uncertainty. This was ridiculous. She was 300 years old. She had faced down pirate fleets and negotiated with hostile aliens. She had survived battles and storms and political intrigue. Yet here she was nervous about a simple dinner with a human she had just met. Her usual clothing consisted of practical leather and sturdy boots designed for flying and fighting. She had formal robes for the rare occasions when she needed to attend diplomatic functions, but those seemed too elaborate for a casual dinner. She finally settled on a simple tunic in deep blue with comfortable pants and her good boots. The outfit was nicer than her daily wear, but not trying too hard. She left her hair loose, letting it fall past her shoulders. Ember watched from the entrance, making soft, approving sounds. The dragon seemed genuinely happy about this development. Kayla wondered when her life had reached the point where she was taking fashion advice from a dragon. "I am only going because it would be rude to decline," Kayla said out loud. "He seems sincere, and it is just one meal. Nothing significant." Ember snorted, sending a small puff of smoke into the air. The dragon clearly did not believe her excuses. Kayla left the fortress as the sun began to set. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. She walked through the outpost toward the main district. Valdris Prime was not a large settlement. It served primarily as a refueling station and trading post. Most of the residents were temporary visitors rather than permanent inhabitants. The buildings were functional rather than beautiful, and the streets were clean but unremarkable. The Golden Nebula restaurant was easy to find. It had the blue awning Lucas had mentioned and large windows that looked out over the plaza. Kayla paused outside, trying to calm her nerves. This was strange territory for her. She knew how to command dragons and negotiate with traders. She knew how to fight and survive. But social situations like this had never been her strength. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. The interior was warm and welcoming, with soft lighting and simple wooden furniture. A few other diners sat at scattered tables, talking quietly. Lucas was already there, sitting at a corner table. He stood when he saw her, and his face lit up with genuine pleasure. "You came," he said, sounding both happy and slightly surprised. "I was not sure if you would. I said I would consider it," Kayla replied. "And I decided that it might be nice to have dinner with someone who appreciates dragons." Lucas pulled out a chair for her, and she sat down. The gesture was courteous without being excessive. They ordered food from a menu that featured dishes from several different worlds. Kayla chose a vegetable stew from her home planet, while Lucas selected something called pasta that apparently came from Earth. The conversation started easily, picking up where they had left off earlier. Lucas asked about her experiences protecting the trade routes. She described some of the more memorable encounters with pirates and smugglers. Most criminals fled at the sight of 3 dragons, but a few had been foolish enough to fight. She kept the stories light, avoiding the truly violent details. Lucas shared his own adventures traveling between stations and ships. He had worked on everything from small personal vessels to massive cargo haulers. He had repaired life support systems while the crew was still breathing the air. He had fixed weapons systems in the middle of battles. He had even once repaired a ship's engine while it was actively exploding, though he admitted that had been poor planning on his part. "You seem to have a talent for getting into dangerous situations," Kayla observed with amusement. "I could say the same about you," Lucas replied. "At least I only work on ships. You actually fight pirates. Someone has to keep the trade routes safe," Kayla said. "Pirates prey on the weak and the vulnerable. If no one stops them, they just get bolder." "That is very heroic," Lucas said. "But who protects you?" The question caught Kayla off guard. No one had asked her that before. "I have my dragons," she said. "And I can take care of myself." "I'm sure you can," Lucas agreed. "But everyone needs someone watching their back. Even heroes." They talked about their philosophies and beliefs. Lucas believed in helping people directly, making a tangible difference in individual lives. He did not trust large organizations or distant governments to solve problems. He wanted to see the results of his work with his own eyes. Kayla understood that impulse. It was why she had chosen to protect the trade routes rather than serve in some official capacity. The food arrived, and they ate while continuing to talk. The conversation flowed naturally from topic to topic. They discussed books they had read and places they had visited. Lucas had a gift for storytelling, making even mundane repairs sound interesting. Kayla found herself laughing more than she had in years. "What made you want to work with dragons?" Lucas asked between bites of pasta. "That must have been quite a commitment, especially at 50 years old." Kayla considered the question. "I felt disconnected from my own people," she said slowly. "Elves value tradition and community, but I always wanted more. When I found Ember's egg, it felt like fate. Here was a creature that needed me, and I needed her. We could protect each other and build something meaningful together." "Do you ever regret it?" Lucas asked. "Never," Kayla said firmly. "The dragons gave me purpose. They gave me freedom. I cannot imagine my life without them." Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "I feel the same way about my ship," he said. "It is not much to look at, and it breaks down constantly, but it is mine. It represents my choice to live life on my own terms." They finished their meal and ordered tea. The restaurant was quieter now, with only a few other diners remaining. The lighting had dimmed, creating an intimate atmosphere. Kayla realized she was genuinely enjoying herself. Lucas was easy to talk to. He listened more than he spoke, and his questions showed real curiosity rather than polite interest. "Can I ask you something personal?" Lucas said after a moment of comfortable silence. "You can ask," Kayla replied. "I might not answer, but you can ask." "Why did you agree to have dinner with me?" Lucas said. "I got the impression you do not do this often." Kayla thought about how to answer. "Because you treated my dragons with respect," she said finally, "and because you asked without expecting anything in return. Most beings want something from me. You just wanted to talk." Lucas smiled. "Well, I am glad I asked," he said. "This has been one of the best evenings I have had in a long time." "For me as well," Kayla admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. They left the restaurant together, walking slowly through the plaza. The night air was cool and pleasant. Above them, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Kayla could see her fortress in the distance, built into the mountainside. Lucas walked beside her, matching her pace. "I leave tomorrow morning," Lucas said with obvious regret. "My ship is scheduled to depart at dawn."
"I need to get to the Nexus station for another repair job." Kayla felt a strange sense of disappointment.
She had known this was temporary, but somehow she had not expected to mind so much. "That is unfortunate," she said, keeping her voice neutral. "Would it be all right if I contacted you?" Lucas asked. "I travel through this sector fairly regularly. Maybe we could meet again sometime." "I would like that," Kayla said. She meant it more than she expected to. They reached the edge of the plaza where their paths diverged. Lucas would return to his ship and Kayla would head back to her fortress. They stood facing each other, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Thank you for tonight," Lucas said. "For taking a chance on a stranger. It meant a lot to me." "Thank you for asking," Kayla replied, "and for seeing my dragons as more than just weapons or curiosities." "They are family," Lucas said simply. "Anyone can see that if they bother to look." He reached out and gently squeezed her hand. The contact was brief but warm. Then he turned and walked toward the docking area where his ship waited. Kayla watched him go, feeling something shift inside her chest. It was not love. She barely knew him. But it was possibility. The sense that maybe her solitary life did not have to be quite so solitary after all. She returned to her fortress where Ember was waiting. The dragon looked at her expectantly, clearly wanting details. Kayla found herself smiling as she stroked the dragon's copper scales. "It was nice," she told Ember. "He is kind and genuine. And he leaves tomorrow, so it does not matter anyway." Ember made a sound that clearly expressed disagreement. The dragon believed it mattered very much. Over the next several weeks, Kayla found herself thinking about Lucas more than she expected. He had sent her his contact information and she had saved it, but she had not reached out. What would she say? She was not good at casual communication. She had spent 300 years prioritizing action over words. Then one evening a message appeared on her communication device. It was from Lucas. The message was simple and friendly. He was at the Nexus station finishing a complicated repair job. He hoped she was well and that her dragons were healthy. He included a picture of a particularly interesting engine component that he thought she might find amusing, given their earlier conversation about human technology. Kayla stared at the message for a long time. She could ignore it. She could let this connection fade naturally. But something made her respond. She sent back a brief message telling him about a recent patrol where she had helped a damaged freighter limp back to port. She included a picture of Frost and Storm flying together against a sunset. Lucas responded quickly. His messages were warm and engaging, full of details about his work and questions about hers. They began exchanging messages regularly. Nothing dramatic, just small updates about their lives. Lucas would tell her about interesting repairs or strange customers. Kayla would describe her patrols or share observations about the different species that passed through her territory. The messages became a bright spot in her routine. Kayla found herself looking forward to them. She would check her device more frequently than necessary, hoping to see a new message. When one arrived, she would read it immediately, sometimes more than once. She started taking pictures of interesting things during her patrols specifically to share with Lucas. Ember noticed the change in her behavior. The dragon would make approving sounds whenever Kayla smiled at her communication device. The twins also seemed pleased that their bonded companion was connecting with someone. Dragons were social creatures, despite their fearsome reputation, and they understood the importance of relationships, too. Months after their dinner, Lucas sent a message saying he would be passing through the sector again. His ship needed some maintenance and Valdris Prime had the parts he needed. Would she be interested in meeting again, perhaps for another dinner? Kayla agreed without hesitation. She tried to tell herself it was just a friendly meal between acquaintances. But she spent extra time choosing her outfit and making sure her hair looked presentable. Ember watched the preparations with obvious amusement. Lucas arrived 3 days later. Kayla met him at the landing platform and was struck again by how genuinely happy he seemed to see her. He greeted her dragons, first respecting the bond she had with them. Ember, Frost, and Storm all welcomed him enthusiastically. They remembered him and clearly approved of his return. The dinner was even better than the first one. They talked for hours, sharing more stories and learning more about each other. Lucas told her about his childhood dreams and the moment he realized he wanted to work in space. Kayla described her training with the dragons and the challenges of learning to fly alongside creatures so much larger than herself. Afterward, they walked through the outpost. It was late and most of the shops were closed. They ended up sitting on a bench overlooking the landing area where ships came and went. The conversation turned more personal. "Can I tell you something?" Lucas said. "I have been looking forward to seeing you again for weeks. You are different from anyone I have ever met. Not just because of the dragons, though they are incredible, but because you are honest and direct. You say what you mean and you do what you say. That is rare." Kayla felt her cheeks warm. "I could say the same about you," she replied. "Most beings have complicated motives. You just want to help people and enjoy life. It is refreshing." "I was hoping," Lucas said carefully, "that maybe we could make this a regular thing. I travel through this sector every few months anyway. Maybe we could plan to meet when I am in the area. If you want to, I would like that," Kayla said. "More than I expected to, honestly." "Good," Lucas said, his smile brightening. "Because I really enjoy spending time with you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. Kayla felt peaceful in a way she rarely experienced. Her life was usually about vigilance and readiness. But sitting here with Lucas, she could just be herself without armor or pretense. Over the following months, they established a pattern. Lucas would message her when he was heading toward her sector, and they would arrange to meet. Sometimes it was just dinner. Other times they would explore the outpost together, or Lucas would help with maintenance on her fortress systems. He was excellent at fixing things, and he seemed to enjoy making himself useful. Kayla introduced him to more of her world. She took him flying on Ember's back, showing him the mountain ranges and canyons from above. Lucas was thrilled despite his obvious nervousness about heights. She taught him some basic dragon commands, and he practiced until he could make simple requests that the dragons understood. Lucas shared his world with her as well. He taught her about human culture and customs. He played music from Earth that she had never heard before. He cooked meals from his home planet, trying to recreate flavors from his childhood. Some experiments were more successful than others, but Kayla appreciated the effort. Their relationship deepened gradually. They moved from friendly acquaintances to genuine friends. Kayla found herself sharing thoughts and feelings she rarely expressed. Lucas did the same. They talked about their fears and hopes. They debated philosophy and argued about the best approaches to problems. Sometimes they disagreed, but they never fought. They respected each other too much for that. One evening after dinner, Lucas asked her a question that had clearly been on his mind. "Where do you see yourself in 50 years?" he said. "Are you happy with your current life, or do you want something different?" Kayla considered the question seriously. "I am content," she said. "The dragons give me purpose, and protecting the trade routes matters. But sometimes I wonder if there could be more. Not instead of what I have, but in addition to it. What would that more look like?" Lucas asked. "Connection," Kayla said. "Community. I chose solitude because I did not fit in with my own people. But maybe solitude does not have to mean isolation. Maybe I can have relationships while still being true to myself." "I think you can," Lucas said gently. "I think you already are." Their meetings continued, becoming more frequent as Lucas adjusted his schedule to pass through her sector more often. Other people at the outpost began to notice. The station manager made a teasing comment about Lucas becoming a regular visitor. A few traders asked Kayla if the human was her partner. She did not know how to answer that question. They had not defined their relationship. They simply enjoyed each other's company. 6 months after their first meeting, Lucas arrived with a proposal. He had been offered a long-term contract to maintain the outpost systems. The pay was good and it would mean staying in one place for at least a year, but he wanted to know how Kayla felt about it before accepting. You should make the decision based on what is best for you. Kayla said, though her heart was racing. Do not stay just because of me. But you are part of the equation, Lucas said. I like my nomadic lifestyle, but I also value what we have built together. If staying here means seeing you regularly, then that factors into my decision. I just want to make sure you are comfortable with it. Kayla took a deep breath. She was 300 years old. She had faced countless dangers without hesitation, but this felt more frightening than any battle. I would like it if you stayed, she said quietly. I have enjoyed these past months more than I can express. Then I will accept the contract, Lucas said with a smile. He moved to the outpost, officially taking up residence in quarters near the landing area. At first, Kayla worried that seeing each other so frequently would diminish their connection, but instead their relationship grew stronger. They fell into new routines. Lucas would help with maintenance work on her fortress. Kayla would assist him with complex repairs that required extra strength or a different perspective. The dragons adored Lucas. Ember would often curl up near him while he worked, making contented rumbling sounds. Frost and Storm would playfully compete for his attention. He treated them with constant respect and affection. He learned their individual personalities and preferences. He brought them treats and spoke to them like the intelligent beings they were. One day, Lucas asked if he could try flying with her on a patrol. Kayla agreed, feeling both excited and nervous. She helped him onto Ember's back, showing him how to hold the riding harness properly. Then they took off, soaring over the mountains and valleys. Lucas laughed with pure joy as they flew. The sound made Kayla's heart feel lighter than it had in decades. They started patrolling together regularly. Lucas proved surprisingly useful during encounters with pirates. He understood ship systems and could spot vulnerabilities quickly. More than once, his technical knowledge helped them disable hostile vessels without serious combat. The pirates learned to avoid the sector when they heard the Dragon Lady had an engineer working with her. The outpost community noticed the partnership. Some people were curious about the elf woman and the human who had become inseparable. Others simply accepted it as normal. Kayla found that she did not mind the attention. For the first time in her long life, she felt like she belonged somewhere, not just with her dragons, but with a community of people who knew and accepted her. 8 months into their partnership, Lucas invited Kayla to his quarters for dinner. He had spent the day cooking something special. When she arrived, the small space was lit with soft lighting, and the table was set carefully. He had prepared a meal that combined ingredients from both their homeworlds. The effort and thought he had put into it touched her deeply. They ate and talked as always, but there was a different quality to the evening. Something unspoken hung in the air between them. After dinner, they sat together on the small couch that served as Lucas's main furniture. He reached for her hand and she let him take it. Kayla, Lucas said, his voice serious. We have been doing this dance for months now. Meeting and talking and spending time together. And I need to know where we stand. Because for me, this stopped being just friendship a while ago. Kayla's breath caught. She had felt the same way, but had been afraid to name it. I feel the same, she said. But I am 300 years old, Lucas. You are, 35? I will live for another 1,000 years if nothing kills me first. That is a complicated situation, I know, Lucas said. I have thought about it a lot. And yes, the age difference is significant, but right now in this moment I care about you. I want to be with you. However much time we have together is worth it to me, unless you do not feel the same way. I do feel the same way, Kayla admitted. You have brought something into my life that I did not know was missing. Joy and companionship, in the sense that someone truly sees me, but I worry about the future, about what happens when you age and I do not, about how that will hurt. Every relationship has challenges, Lucas said gently. Age difference, longevity, different species. But people face those challenges because being together is worth it. I would rather have whatever time we can share than walk away, because I am afraid of the ending. Kayla looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. She thought about the past months and how much richer her life had become with him in it. She thought about the laughter they shared and the comfortable silences. She thought about how her dragons had accepted him completely. And she realized that he was right. The potential pain of loss did not outweigh the joy of connection. All right, she said. Let us try this. Together. Lucas smiled and pulled her closer. They kissed for the first time, tentative at first, and then with growing confidence. When they finally pulled apart, Kayla felt like something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer the solitary dragon lady. She was part of a partnership with all the vulnerability and possibility that implied. They took their time building their relationship. They were patient with each other's differences. Lucas learned about elven customs and Kayla studied human traditions. They had disagreements and worked through them. They supported each other's work and celebrated each other's successes. They built a life together that honored both their individual identities and their shared connection. The outpost became home in a new way. Kayla still flew her patrols and protected the trade routes, but now she had someone to come home to. Lucas continued his engineering work, keeping the station running smoothly, but he had someone who understood the satisfaction he got from solving complex problems. The dragons thrived on the expanded family dynamic. They had always been social creatures, and having Lucas around satisfied something in them as well. Ember in particular seemed pleased that Kayla had found a companion. The copper dragon would often make sounds that seemed like approval when she saw them together. One evening a year after, Lucas had asked about their relationship status. They sat together watching the sunset. From the fortress overlook, the sky was painted in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Ember, Frost, and Storm were flying together, performing aerial maneuvers that looked like a dance. "Do you ever regret it?" Kayla asked. "Choosing to stay here with me. You could have traveled anywhere, done anything." "Never," Lucas said firmly. "This is exactly where I want to be. With you and the dragons and this strange little community we have built, I have never been happier." Kayla leaned against him, feeling content. She had spent 300 years believing she needed to be alone to be free, but she had learned that connection and freedom were not opposites. She could have both. She could be herself and still share her life with someone who understood her. The future was still uncertain. Lucas would age and she would not. They would face challenges that most couples never had to consider. But they would face those challenges together. For now they had each other, and that was enough. The dragons landed nearby, settling in for the evening. Ember rumbled softly, a sound of contentment. Kayla smiled and took Lucas's hand. Tomorrow she would fly her patrols and he would fix broken systems. They would continue their work and their lives. But they would do it together, and that made all the difference. She had asked for an outline of a story about a date request that shook the dragon lady. But it had become so much more than that. It had become a story about finding connection when you least expected it, about taking risks on relationships despite the uncertainty, about building a life that honored who you were while making space for someone else. The date request had been just the beginning. Everything that followed was the real story, and it was still being written one day at a time,